I think you're amazing.
You are too, Henry.
Thank you so much. Well, Perry, you are awesome.
Thank you, brother. Thank you, and I appreciate you what you're doing too, buddy.
Well, thank you. Because if you allow the world to define you, if you allow friends to define you, if you allow your spouse to define you, or anybody to define you outside of how God sees you, that does open the door to rejection. God bless you. I hope y'all have an amazing day.
Thank you, Brother Henry.
Thank you.
God bless you too. Thank you for having us.
Welcome to the Brother Henry and You Show. I am your host, Henry Harris. Today is my highest and distinct honor to introduce a man who is truly motivational, brilliant, iconic, and overall throughout the years made us laugh. And he's contributed so much to us, whether that was through a book that he wrote, a movie that he produced, television. He's always made us proud. Today we have Demond Wilson. He is known for so many great things and accomplishments in life, but widely known for his role on Sanford and Son television show, which aired in 1972 to 77. Demond, thank you so much for being on the show today.
This is my pleasure. My pleasure. Absolutely.
The first question I would like to ask is, can you tell us a little bit about your childhood and upbringing? You were born October 13th, 1946 in Valdosta, Georgia.
Well, only because my mom had me later in life. Matter of fact, my mother was 46 years old when I was born, and she had miscarried a couple of times because even though we lived in Sugar Hill, which was the exclusive part of Harlem, people like Ellington and Basie and Coleman Hawkins and a lot of celebrities lived, and Clarence Williams III lived in Sugar Hill, and we lived in a 4-story tenement, and she used to have to walk up 4 flights of stairs, and she miscarried twice. So both my parents were from Valdosta, Georgia. My grandparents lived there on both sides, and she went to stay with her mother so she wouldn't have to go up and down stairs. She wanted to keep this one. She said, I feel like this one is my last chance, and he's going to be special. So that's why I was born in Valdosta. She stayed down there with my sister and her mom until I was just about a month old, so I could travel. And then we went back home to New York. So I used to visit my grandmother and my relatives in Valdosta during the summer till I was about 12 years old. Both parents are buried there. All my grandparents on both sides are buried there, and my mom and dad and my sister are buried there.
And how long were your parents together? How long were they married?
Almost 70 years. Just a little shy. My wife and I have been together for coming up on 49 years.
Oh, congratulations.
Well, I don't know.
These days, people don't stay married that long.
Yeah, but see, my wife's parents, God rest their soul, my father-in-law was a police officer. He worked homicide, and then he worked Vice, Gold Shield police officer in Philadelphia, and my mother-in-law was high up in the government. She worked for the government. So my wife comes from a 2-parent home that they were married for 60 years, and I'm from a 2-parent home. So divorce was not something that was around me. I mean, I didn't, in Harlem in those days, most kids had a mom and a dad.
Mm-hmm.
This single mother thing, I don't need no man, blah, blah,
Yeah.
blah, blah. That's post nonsensical. I mean, and now you see what's happened to her. And I'm not saying that a woman can't raise a male child, but
Yeah.
a woman can't teach a boy how to become a man. She just can't do it. She can love him and nurture him and put all of that feminine energy into him so that when he comes out here, this world would chop him up.
Yeah.
I didn't mean to go off on a tangent, but
No, you're good.
divorce when I grew up was not something that you talked about too much because it wasn't prevalent.
Yeah.
You know.
So when you got married, you went in for the long haul.
I went into a marriage with the intent that people my age at that time went into a marriage for. These people today have contracts. Okay, you do this, you do that, you do that, you do that. There's no such thing as irreconcilable differences. That's a term that lawyers made up, just like conspiracy theorist or conspiracy theory is a term that the FBI made up when people didn't buy the one bullet nonsense on the assassination of JFK. That the bullet hit him, went out, hit Conley, went out, hit this, up, and banged off the garbage can. When people didn't buy that, they said, well, if you say anything other than what we say happened, you're a conspiracy theorist. They made that term up, which when I hear that, I mean, he's telling the truth.
Yeah. Yeah. And thank you for answering that question. At the age of 4, you made your way to Broadway,
Six.
Taking up tap and ballet lessons. And at age of 12, you appeared at the famed Apollo Theater in Harlem. It seems as if performing came so naturally for you. And what I mean by that is it seemed like it was a part of you. So engaging in performing as a child and doing all of that, I just want to ask you this question. Did you ever think in the near future you will be as successful and impactful as a child? I guess what I'm trying to say is, as a child, when you were doing all that performing, did you envision yourself being what you would be when you got older?
Well, I envisioned myself being successful, but I went beyond with all of the things in my life. Someone said to me, why don't you write your autobiography? I said, I'm still living it. What?
Yeah.
I haven't finished yet. I'm not finished yet. I just completed 6 episodes of a new series called Eleanor's Bench. I shot over the summer, May and June in Virginia. And the series is called Eleanor's Bench. I play the aging father of a daughter who I put through law school, who is a successful higher court lawyer. And she and her dad have a kind of acrimonious love relationship. The dad, my character, is 82, 83 years old, and he has cancer. And because of his strong faith in the Lord, he doesn't want chemo. He just wants to naturally go out of here, because he tells his daughter, I know where I'm going. And she said, no, Dad, I want you around. I want you to be around. She wants him to move into her mini mansion in the DC area, and he wants to stay in his little house that he was with her mother. And he says, every room that I go to in this house, your mother's there. So what am I going to do with your big house? Just sit there watching television all day? No, I'm going to stay here with your mama. And I found it, the only problem was so hot. It was, in the South, it was humid. We were there in June, July. It was hot. So I'm not finished yet. And I just started a new book. I've been a little too distracted with family stuff. You think when your kids move out, now it's going to be my wife and I, and we're not going to have, now there's more stuff we have to do than we ever did before. My 6 adult progenies are some in Atlanta, 2 in Atlanta, 2 in Aliso Viejo, and 2 in Irvine, California. So the closest ones can come to our house. I live in the desert, my wife and I, and they can come in a couple of hours. It takes them to get here. But they're all grown now. My oldest is just about that far from 50.
And you have grandchildren?
Yeah. My wife and I had 4 girls and 2 boys.
Oh, and you don't spoil them at all, do you?
Well, they're too old now. But they were, yeah, absolutely. The biggest stinker in my house is my wife.
Yeah.
My mother told me years ago when she was alive, bless her soul, she said, we were living in Bel Air at the time. I was doing The New Odd Couple, and she came out with my dad and my sister, and my nephew, who purchased the house across the street from me. And my mom observed me the way I dealt with my wife, and she said, "Demond, you spoiling that girl. You're
Mm-hmm.
gonna regret it one day. You
Mm-hmm.
can't unspoil her." Oh, I should have listened to mama. Yeah, she's spoiled. Our kids tell them, they say, "Mommy, you're so spoiled."
Mm-hmm. 1966 to 1968, you served in the United States Army and was in the 4th Infantry Division in Vietnam.
Yes,
And I want
sir.
to tell you, before I ask you this question, I want to say thank you for your service. Can you tell us a little bit about your experience? You don't have to go deep into it, but what was that like?
It was horrible. It was something that happened 53 years ago. I was upset because I did not have any of my relatives or friends, parents' friends that had enough power and authority to keep me from going. I was in college and I just dropped out in 2 months before the last semester and got drafted. And it was not something that you can put into words. It's an experience that only I would imagine it's like somebody being shot with a gun and trying to explain what that feels like to somebody who's never been shot. But suffice it to say, it was not something that I want to talk about too much. When I came home initially, I'm looking at my wall in my office here, and I'm seeing medals and stuff and
Mhm.
frames hanging on the wall. I was decorated. I served with the 4th Infantry Division. I was one of the first waves that went over, and I served up in the Central Highlands in Pleiku, up in the north by DMZ, and it was something that I knew that I was going to return home. I did know that, but I had to go through that. I hate to use the word hell because that doesn't. It was not a nice experience. And on top of that, when I came home, I would walk down the street with my uniform on in New York City. I went down to Wall Street. My nephew had an interview for me on Wall Street, and I went down. I wore my uniform, and people were jeering me in the subways and calling me murderer. So when I hear people say "thank you for your service," it's almost like a joke. I want to
Yeah.
say it's too little, too late.
Yeah.
I was not welcomed home. As a matter of fact, I got the job on Wall Street, and within 6 months, I was working on the floor of the New York Stock Exchange. And then the theater thing started coming in. I walked away from that, and my family thought I was nuts. They said, "You're making a lot of money down there, and you're going to leave that to go back into show business. You don't know if you're going to make it." Blah 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 blah. And then when you make it, they say, "Oh, you knew you were going to make it." My parents knew because I grew up in Harlem, and there was a contingency, small window of talented kids that made it from those schools that we went to. I started at the Hoskins School of Culture, where I learned, which actors and people today don't have. I learned elocution, which is how to speak. I learned how to walk. I learned how to the basic ballet positions, first, second, third. But I didn't want to do ballet because the kids in the block would razz me. So I had a penchant for a talent for tap dancing, and they taught me. They said, "Wow, this kid's good." My mother wanted me to be like Bill Robinson. She said, "I used to say that to you when I was carrying you there. I want my baby to be a dancer like the Nicholas Brothers and Bill Robinson." But there was Leslie Uggams, who was a few years older than me. We went to the same middle school. Then there was Frankie Lyman. When Frankie Lyman made it, even though he was like 3 years older than me, I was very upset because I said, "I'm just as, ooh, Frankie Lyman made it." Then there was Eddie Holman. "Hey there, lonely girl." I know you. "Hey there, lonely girl." His
Yeah.
song just went bow, and I said, "Eddie made it."
Yeah.
And then Clarence Williams the third. I used to see Clarence walking through Harlem, and we became friends before he passed away. But back in those days, Clarence he was the man on Broadway. He was doing slow dance on the Killing Ground, and he'd bop through my neighborhood, in the afternoon, and Clarence was always cool. So then, I knew that I was being told as a child, this kid is talented, blah, 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 blah. I'd go down for an audition, and my mother would say, the people they'd go crazy. Oh, we love this kid. I was doing radio commercials when I was 12 years old. Nowadays, they use a woman for children, but in those days, they used articulate children. I see some of these. It grieves me when I see black actors that can barely speak.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, they're not. We had to take elocution to learn how to speak properly, singing lessons. You were trained across the board. When they refused to pay me what I wanted on Sanford and Son, I called my manager, Nicky Savano, and I went to Vegas.
Mm-hmm.
They said, you can't do television, you can't do movies. If your house catches on fire and the cameras come and you talk on camera, we're going to take everything away from you. And I said, okay. I went to Vegas, played the main showroom at the Hilton International where Elvis, Bill Cosby, I think Gladys Knight played there, Barbara Streisand, with Glenn Campbell. We co-starred. So Red came down and saw the show. He said, hey, man, y'all better pay that boy.
Yeah.
He down there in Vegas tearing it up. You better pay him.
Mm-hmm.
And so he said, Suzanne Summers left Three's company and she never went back. She got a bunch of money.
Yeah.
He said, I went down there, saw the show. Y'all better pay him. That's not what he said. He used another word.
Yeah. Upon returning from Vietnam, you mentioned a little bit about it. You were featured on several Broadway on and off stage productions. You performed many guest roles on several television series, All in the Family, Mission Impossible, Baby I'm Back, and so forth. But in 1972, you played a major role on Sanford and Son. Can you?
Well, you got it backwards. You got it backwards because it was those TV shows, and then there was All in the Family. All in the Family was with Norman Lear and John Rich and those guys, and they called me up and they said, I did not want to do television. I did a film up in Canada, my first film called The Dealing, with Barbara Hershey, John Lithgow, both of whom have Oscars, in Toronto. And I came back to Broadway, and Walter Mirisch came to town and saw me down at the Public Theater. Al Pacino was down there in those days. And they called my agent and they said, we want to put him as the young athlete, track star from Northern California. And it was the Sidney Poitier film, The Organization. I played Charlie Blossom. It was Raul Julia, who was Gomez in the, was that silly movie? The Addams Family.
Yeah.
Raul did a million films, but people would remember him as the father in the Addams Family. The late Ron O'Neal, Superfly. And we went to San Francisco. I went to San Francisco and I did The Organization with the late Mr. Sidney Poitier. And when I came back, I went to New York briefly, and I had offers to go to Cali, and so I packed up my little ditty and moved to California, and I did a Mission Impossible and TV shows like that. And my agent at the time, David Graham, who became a huge casting director for movies, called me up and said, "Do you know who Norman Lear is?" I said, "Never heard of him." They said, "Do you know what All in the Family is?" I said, "What is that?" He said, it's the #1 TV show in America. I said, "I don't watch episodical television. Get out of here." And he said, "They want you to do a spot." I said, "I don't want to do television. I'm a stage movie actor. I don't want to do television." But there was something that was holding me captive. I mean, when I came from Vietnam, I had a habit, and I haven't to this day been able to kick it, called eating. So when I said, I don't want to do, you just got to let it simmer, you'll get it.
Yeah.
I had this terrible habit of eating, and I wanted to continue to do that. So I watched it and I said, no, I can't. I'd rather have a 2-piece pioneer chicken dinner for till I get another film. I am not going to do that. Guy's horrible. He says, well, you and Cleavon Little, the late Cleavon Little. So you notice all these actors I'm naming are no longer with us. Cleavon Little's
Yeah.
Blazing Saddles. Did Blazing Saddles. Won a Tony on Broadway for Pearlie, opposite Melba Moore. And they said, you and Cleavon break into the bunker home and you put a gun to Archie's head. I said, okay, let me sign it right over here. So these jokes are too fast for you, I know. So I went and I did All in the Family, and about 2 months later, I got a call, and my agent said to me, do you know who Bud Yorkin is? I said, yes, of course, I know who Bud Yorkin is. He used to direct Frank Sinatra's shows and Abbott and Costello. I said, yeah, I know he does movies. He said, he wants to know if you want to do a television series opposite Red Fox.
Hmm.
And I said, huh? And that's what my dog does. When we tell him to do something,
Yeah.
I said, Red Fox? What kind of what is this, midnight shows? They
Yeah.
said, no. This would be a network show. He's the father, you play the son. So I said, oh, well, eh. They said, have you met Red? I said, never. Why would I meet Red? We go in.
Yeah.
So he said, so they flew me. I flew to Las Vegas with Aaron Rubin, the late Aaron Rubin, Andy Griffith Show, Goma Powell, USMC. Aaron was like the mastermind behind the production of the show, and his wife, Maureen Arthur, the late Maureen Arthur, who was the bimbo in How to Succeed in Business with Robert Morse. She was the Marilyn Monroe character. So I went to Vegas and I met Red, and he was Red. He was I'd never met in my lifetime anyone like Red Fox that morning, because we couldn't see him until his last show went off. He did a midnight show. So we're sitting with Fox in his garage at 3:00 in the morning. And he just came off the stage. He was going one after another, just hitting him. You couldn't say anything. He was, and at first I thought, well, why is he doing this? He's not letting this guy talk. And I found out later on that he was setting the table for what he was going to ask them to pay him.
Mm-hmm.
And we immediately clicked, because I'm from Harlem, kid from the street, and he, was from St. Louis, but his best friend, he used to say to me, hey, Demon. He called me Demon. He said, hey, Demon, you the smartest nigga I've known since Malcolm, but you ain't got no cause.
Yeah.
That's what he used to say to me. You the smartest nigga I know since Malcolm.
Yeah.
You ain't got no cause. Malcolm and him were buddies. I'm not saying anything, not because some people say, well, what you talking about Denzel? He was good in that role. Yeah, I ain't talking about that. I'm talking about the project. The book was dubious at best, and the movie just followed the book. So I'm not, the acting in it was sublime. It was perfect. So don't be saying, oh, he just mad because, no. People defend their idols, and then they go to church on Sunday morning. And you got an idol. Somebody said to me, you're my idol. I said, no, I am not.
Yeah.
I'm not your idol. I ain't nobody's idol. Anyway, Red and I hit it off, which was another one of your questions. Or did you and Red Fox get along? What kind of relationship did you have? What we had on screen was exactly what we had off screen, with the exception of the situations were not as ridiculous as they were in television. But we had that kind of relationship. It was like when I first met Fox, it was a teacher and a student, a mentor and a student. And then it became a father slash son type relationship, because Red he just turned 50 when we did that series. And then it became older brother, younger brother. I remember one time I went into Fox and I said to him, it was during between shows. I knocked on his dressing room door, and he said, "Who is it?" I said, "It's me." He said, "Come on in." I came in. He said, "What do you need?" I said, "I had a question I wanted to ask you about something." He said, "No, I ain't gonna know. Get out of my room." He said, "I done taught you everything I know. Now you go figure it out. Let me get some sleep." So that's when the roles change. It happens in life sometimes also, that the son becomes the father, and the father is reduced to being granddad. You know, the
Yeah.
old dude sitting in the chair that passes gas when people come to visit.
Yeah. I want to throw this question in. I know it's not on the paper. I know you and Fox had a good chemistry on and off set, but was there a cast member that you least liked or got along with? Because there were some things in my research where you and
Yeah,
Rollo,
they said that. Well, you
and
know,
I don't know if that's true. I
wait a
don't know if
second.
that's true or not. So I
His
thought
name
you
is,
was,
I'm going to tell you, his name is not Rollo. His name was um, Nathaniel Taylor.
yeah.
And then he changed it to Jita Haji or something like that. Someone said they've been putting that out there. And then I heard an interview that he did, and he said, Damon never cared for me much. Well, I'm going to say this. I was cordial, respectful, affable, and friendly with all of the actors and actresses that came on the series. Nathaniel Taylor, who played Rollo, LaWanda Page, who played Aunt Esther. I would have preferred Bea Richards, but she and Red didn't get along. And LaWanda did a marvelous job. I got along with Don Bexley, who played Bubba, got along with Whitman Mayo, who played Grady.
Brady.
However, my allegiance was to the show and to Fox. So I never got friendly with any of them. As I said before, I'd say, "Hi, how you doing?" But Red and I had the relationship, and nothing came between that relationship until he went to the newspaper and said he didn't want to do the show again, and that hurt me because we always used to feel things out. We, run stuff by each other, and I would have been, my concern was that he put a lot of people out of work. I had $100,000 contract on the table to go to CBS whenever the show ended, and do that series that I did after Sanford and Son, Baby, I'm Back, with Denise Nicholas, who I know from the theater in New York, and Lil Kim Fields, who's now a grown woman doing stuff. She played my daughter's a little girl. She was 6. So it did that part of it, leaving the series and not being paid anymore other than residuals, didn't bother me. What bothered me were 2 things. He didn't just say to me, Damon, I'm going to split after this season. I'm walking down the hall at NBC, and Abernathy, I think his first name was John, was the anchor guy, gray-haired, silver-haired anchor man at NBC, said, "Hi, Damon." He said, "Good morning, Damon." I said, "Hey, John, how you doing?" He said, "How does it feel?" I said, "How does what feel?" He said, you didn't read the Hollywood Reporter today?" I said, "I don't read the Hollywood Reporter any day." He said, you didn't read Variety?" I said, "I don't read those books." "What is it, John?" He says, "Red had it, there's in the headlines in Variety that after this season, he's leaving Sanford and Son." And so it's almost, I felt like, I'm a good actor, so my face didn't break, but I felt like a woman who had just been told that her husband was cheating on her with one of her friends. I've seen that happen in real life and in film, and it's a bit of a shock. An intelligent, sophisticated woman will just take that blow, and you'll see it in her eyes that she's hurt, but you won't break her face with it. Ignorant woman to get all loud and start talking and cussing. "I'm gonna beat him. I'm gonna get," that kind of thing. But that's what I felt like doing, but I didn't. And it hurt me. I never confronted Fox about it. I never went to him and said, "Hey, man, what kind of mess is this?" Never once. Never even brought it up. However, it hurt me. And after the show went off like I said, he put a lot of people out of work. A lot of the cast members were very upset because that show could have gone another 5 years. But what my father said, you can always tell the measure of a man when they start making money. we were like not just Red and I, but the producers and Red and I, we were like a hand and a glove balled up. We were a team. As soon as we became successful and the money came in, it was like, boom, every man for himself. And you would think that myself, the youngest member of the team, these guys were doing stuff in the entertainment industry successfully when I was in grade school. So you would think that the youngest member of the team would be the one to go off the track. I stayed on the track. They just started going in every direction. And I remember my dad said to me when I was a little boy, he said, you can always tell two times you can tell who a man really is. When he's drunk and when he starts making money.
Mm.
I witnessed it. And I just sat there and watched it all play out. Never once did Red and I ever have a crossword with each other. Never. But I was hurt. And after the show went off, I didn't see him for my oldest son, Christopher, wasn't even born when I saw Red last. And Chris was now in the second grade. And I wouldn't have gone around him, but I was a member of the Malibu Racket Club and the tennis club. And some producers came out there. They used to play out there. And Big Arnold Schwarzenegger was out there then, all swole up. And and they said, we have some money for Red Fox. We want to do his 50th anniversary in the business. Do you still see him? I said, I haven't spoken to Fox in over 5-6 years. And so they said, well, you can get in touch with him. I said, well, I know he works in Vegas. So anyway, long story short, I called down there. Prince Spencer, who used to be one of the Step Brothers, was, for people that don't know who the Step Brothers were, Google them. They were an awesome dancing group. Anyway, he said, oh, Demond Red's going to be stoked when he hears the shoe, man. And Fox came to the phone. He said, hey, son. I said, when are you going to be in L.A. next? He said, I'll be up there next week. He had an office in those days on La Brea. So I said, I got some guys that want to meet you. They bugging me. They got some money for you. So I told them, I said, this is not going to be a day at the beach. I got to tell you, you sure you want to do this? And they said, yeah, we got the money. So we just need a signature. We go in there and he unleashed his entire repertoire on this thing. And then looked at me and said, now, how much money are you getting from this? It was embarrassing. And I walked and I left them there with Fox. Anyway, when all of the things went down with him and he was sitting on a crate out in front of his house, they'd taken everything. He looked in the camera and he said, it seems like somebody out there would help me. I helped a lot of people. And I felt like he was talking to me, but I can't be, I love Fox then and I love him now. I mean, I think about him and I laugh and I remember the good things, the good times that we had together because we never had a crossword. And it was the last few months of the last season that this happened. And I went away wounded. I was hurt. Like I said, it's almost like a woman finding out that her husband just cheated on her. And he didn't owe me anything except the respect to come to me. I could have walked. I could have gone. I could have said, I'm sure he thought, well, go. I don't need you. Mm-hmm. But it's hard for a comedy team to stick. Rowan and Martin, they split. I don't know what it is, but something about a comedy team, and that's what we were. We were a team. That's the way we went into it. And that's the way we proceeded through the series. Fox and I were a team. And when he did that, it hurt me. I never said anything to him about it, but it hurt me. And even in my book, people say, well, Demond sounds angry. No, there's nothing but love in that book for Red. Nothing but love, because there was nothing but love between us. And somebody said, did you all get along? I said, did you ever watch an episode? The synergy was there. I didn't have that synergy with the beautiful, talented Denise Nicholas. I didn't have that synergy with Ron Glass, who thought the part made him look gay. And we went, okay, he can't make you look like anything but what you are. So, come on, Ron. what is my motivation? He would say, he was theater trained, so was I. What is my motivation for crossing over there to the table? I said, to get your jack, Negro.
Yeah.
That's what we're here for.
Yeah.
Motivate yourself. I
Yeah.
like that these women on Instagram get on there and they say, he made me, he didn't help my self-esteem. He lowered my self-esteem is how you feel about yourself. Are you
Mhm.
kidding? I
Mhm.
don't need anybody to bolster my self-esteem. Go work on you. Then you don't have to look at he didn't help my self-esteem. He lowered my self. Well, you didn't have a good self-esteem going into it.
Exactly.
Work on yourself. I didn't need a wife to build me and say, oh, you're great and you're wonderful. I needed a beautiful woman to have me some pretty kids and know her place. And
Hmm.
I don't say my wife she got her broker's license. I mean, she doesn't work anymore, but my wife is no dummy. She went to Georgetown, University from Philly. And I don't want anybody to think, oh, he's a cruel taskmaster. No, I look for wife material. These women out here today, many of them are not wife material. They come at you like a man. What you bring into the relationship? I got my own money. I got my own job. I got my own business. So you sound just like a dude.
Yeah.
There's not too many women that are
They,
wife. I
yeah,
found a wife.
I don't like that either. I don't like that either, because it, it portrays to me that you don't need me. If you're gonna keep saying, I got this, I got that, it's like you're showing me you
Bye-bye.
don't need me. So it's like, and I'm not saying
Bye-bye.
there's anything wrong with women having that, but at the same time, it's like, what am I here for in your life? Like,
You know, um, I wanted a wife, and I dated a lot of women. You can imagine when you're famous and not hard to look at, the women are like everywhere. But I did not find wife material. That's what I was looking for. I had a mother and a father and a dad. The Bible says, call no one on this earth your father except him in heaven who is. I had a mom and a dad. My dad went to work and he came home. He went to work and he came home. My mother was a dietitian and she had a thriving business. I still have Afghanistan's on my bed. It's cold down here in the desert right now that my mother made years ago. My mother would have been a cottage industry. She passed away the same year Red Fox did. And my mother did motherly things. She baked bread. She was a homemaker. She was the dietitian at my middle school when my dad went to work. So I saw what a mother and a wife looks like. And all of these girls I dated came at me with 6-inch eyelashes and wrapped her nails. And, I said, and I'm not looking for that. I'm looking for a wife. My wife, when I met her, I said to her, if you can cook, I'll marry you. And she said, oh, buddy. She said, I could always cook, Mr. Wilson, but I know that if I started cooking for you, we'd never go out to dinner again. I said, I'll make you a promise. 2, if you can cook, I'll marry you and we'll go out to dinner whenever you want. And my wife can burn. The girls, I have 4 of them, are constantly calling her for recipes. And she said, you should have paid attention when you were here. And I tried to teach you, and you said, I'm not going to cook. I'm going to go out to dinner. Now you're calling me for recipes so you
yeah,
can cook for your men.
yeah. My last question, Demond, is in the 80s, you accepted your call to ministry. How did that come about? What inspired you to do ministry? I told you prior to this interview, I've had pastors reach out to me. You've either spoke at their church, or a lot of people said they saw you on television, Christian television networks, and so forth. So how did that come about? And that'll be my last question.
I was called as a child. I knew it. My mother knew it. Uh, Even though I was not, because I grew up in Catholicism, that pagan worship. I was totally ensconced in that pagan worship. I was even an
Was
acolyte.
you an altar boy?
That's what an acolyte is. Yes, I
Yeah.
was an altar boy. And because I didn't know any better, like guys in the street used to say, if you knew better, you do better. But when I find truth, even if it comes from the south end of a northbound mule, I gravitate toward it. And I found the truth about that pagan religion. And I had my kids in private Catholic academies and in Beverly Hills and in Orange County. But when we found out what was behind that religion, and I started studying the Word, I'm a Word minister. We broke out. But I was called at an early age. I've always had I'm a three-dimensional thinker, and the third dimension is my spiritual eye. I had that gift from a child. My mother used to say, "No, don't tell people that. Don't tell people that." I was in the Catholic Church coming down the aisle with my second-born daughter, Melissa, who lives in Atlanta with her husband, my granddaughter, and I was carrying her to be christened. And my mom leaned over and said to my dad, "Look, you see that? What I told you? The mind's gonna preach." And in 1983, I just couldn't go anymore. I said, I've done all of this stuff, and I looked around me. I was living in a huge house behind gates, and I had cars and money. And then I said, why am I not happy? I know women are supposed to be happy, but I wasn't even content. I was stressed all the time. And I said, you know what? I started to pray. I got on my knees and I started to pray. And it all opened up for me. And I used to throw down. I mean, if anybody heard me minister, they know what they heard. If people can find their way to my Facebook, I post Sabbath messages every Saturday morning. Well, most Saturday mornings. And it's pretty profound things. I have about 40 pages that will be about 3 chapters of the new book. My wife said, honey, you all of these messages that you're putting in briefly on Facebook are brilliant. You know, people are responding and reposting it. Put all those together and do another book. And so that's what I'm in the process of doing. But this one right here, the New Age Millennium, and the second banana is a coffee table size book. They can only get those on my site, DemonWilson.org. But this right here. They need to read this book. This copyright was 1998. That sounds like, what, 25 years ago?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I always knew that I answered the call in 1983. I got on my knees before the Lord, and I had been studying. My wife couldn't get into bed at night. I had all kind of Bibles. I had Zondervans. I had Living Bibles. I had every translation. I had the Greek and the Hebrew, and I threw the Greek right out the window. People are saying, Jesus, that is not his name. There is no J in the Hebrew alphabet. A J is a Y. And until the 14th century, there was no J in any alphabet.
Mm-hmm.
Jesus has its origin in Iosis, which is Zeus. I don't serve Zeus. His name is Yeshua HaMashiach.
Mm-hmm.
And people say God. I want to thank God. Which one?
Yeah, there's several.
His name is Yahweh, the Elohim. So I hear people say, you need to pray to Jesus. I go, first of all, my Bible was not written in Greek. Mm-hmm. You see these pastors get up and say, the Greek word is onosis. What has that got to do with it? The Bible was written in Hebrew, and Christ spoke Aramaic.
Yeah, he didn't speak English.
No. Somebody said, a guy saw me in the street and he said, Jesus was black. Was Jesus black, Damon? I said, Google Nazareth, 17th, 18th, 19th, and today, and look at the pictures of the people. That's Ooh. What he looked like.
You better preach it. You're actually being very educational right now to people who hold those type of thoughts.
That's why I'm saying it, because I get so tired of hearing this Jesus. What are you talking about? That's not his name. Well, he knows what I'm talking about. I said, let me ask you a question. What is your name? Gilbert? If you were walking down the street, Gilbert, and somebody kept yelling Mike over and over, would you even turn around? Mm-hmm. And if they ran up to you and said Mike, and you turned around and you said, that's not my name. You're not talking to me. That ain't my name. You're praying to somebody that's the Roman Catholic Church are the ones that changed the Sabbath. The mm-hmm. Sabbath is Saturday. Yeah. He didn't go in the ground on Friday and rise on no good Sunday. He went in the ground on Wednesday. 3 days and 3 nights in the earth. He rose up on the Sabbath. You better know what I'm talking about.
You would think a lot of that stuff would be logical, like the math doesn't
The
even.
first thing you said to me was, I do my research.
Yeah.
People in churches today don't want to do research. They're going to look at, when I used to preach, I preached around the world. I preached in Africa in front of thousands. I spoke in Africa in 1985 at the Kenyatta Hall. There was 12,000 people there. And I said, this year, there's not going to be a drought. Every year there's a drought in Nairobi. The crops die, the people die. I said, it's not going to be a drought. I'm on the plane coming home, and my oldest living friend said, Damon Wilson, did you hear what you said to those people? I said a lot of things. He said, no, the last thing you said at Kenyatta Hall, you said it was not going to be a drought. And the drought season starts in October. He says, listen, if it's a drought, you can never go back to Africa. I said what I said, and I said what I said. I walked away, didn't think about it again, was in New Orleans with the mayor doing a marching around the Coliseum for anti-drugs and whatever that was caused. And I got back to the hotel, and my wife said, there's a man named Wilson Mambaleo, says he was in your group in Africa. Please call him. He's done called it 12 times. So I called him. He said, Brother Wilson, I'm going to tell you something. If you come back to Africa, there will be no place to hold the people. He said, 2 weeks after you left, the skies opened up. It has been raining for the last month. People are drowning, Brother Wilson. So now, 18 years later, I'm in South Carolina at a golf tournament, and John Amos and I, we had some words back in the day, and we straightened that out, and we became, friendly with each other. And I love Big John. And he called me up. He says, Damon, you're going to be ministering at a church over here. And he said, I'm going to another church. He said, can we have breakfast together before you leave? I said, I might not see you in a while. I said, cool. So we went into the concierge room. It was just the two of us there. And there was a young African girl there, college graduate student. And she was serving us, just John and I. And she said, Brother Wilson, can I have a word with you, please? I said, of course. She said, I was a little girl, and my auntie took me to the meeting where you were in Kenyatta Hall. Do you remember that? I said, of course, I was there. Mm-hmm. She said, oh, my Lord, Brother Wilson, why have you not come back? The people are still talking about the prophecy you made. I said, well, I haven't been led to go back. It'd be hard to follow that up. If I go back, what am I going to do, walk on water? I can't follow that up. And so I don't know why I went on that, but I know I was talking about IOCs, IOEIS, whatever, it's close. IOCs, that's Greek, has to do with the gods, the Greek gods. Zeus, Iosis is Zeus. So you people are serving Zeus? Been a pleasure.
Yeah, you take it easy, Damon. You have a great day.
God bless you, brother.
You too.
Well, Perry, you are awesome.
Thank you, brother. Thank you, and I appreciate what you're doing too, buddy.
Well, thank you.
Because if you allow the world to define you, if you allow friends to define you, if you allow your spouse to define you, or anybody to define you outside of how God sees you, that does open the door to rejection.
God bless you. I hope y'all have an amazing day.
Thank you, Brother Henry.
Thank you.
God bless you too. Thank you for having me.